Welcome to the video! In this video I'll be showing you how I painted a flawed watercolor painting and then how I fixed it digitally with the free digital painting software called Krita. Let's get right to it! First, I found a reference on pexels.com, a page where you can use the photos without any copyright trouble. I found this beautiful photo of a man in shirt and suspenders, and as I had just made a couple of successful digital studies of shirts and their folds, I thought I would try to transfer that knowledge to the traditional medium of watercolor. I'll put a link to the reference in the description below. When I had my reference, I wanted to make it a tiny bit more interesting, so I edited it in Krita to have more pronounced colors, and I added the small wings too. Sadly, I forgot to record this process. But then I printed the reference out and started drawing. And it's here that my troubles really begin. I was a bit tired, so I didn't start by mapping out where everything would be in big shapes. Instead, I started drawing locally, which means that I focused on one small area at a time. So, by the time I had drawn both hands in really fine detail, I realized that the proportions were wildly off the mark. At this point I couldn't be bothered to erase my detailed hands, so I just stupidly continued instead of starting over. Then I drew the face and it leaned so much. But I didn't really see it and everything was already off, so what was wrong with adding a leading face to the mix? Yeah. Bad decision. Then I drew the body and I simply drew it way too long. It made his arms look even weirder and smaller compared to the elongated frame. But was I going to change all this when I was this far into the process? No! I was lazy and tired and just wanted to paint for the fun of it, so I continued. The painting stage started promising. I started by establishing the main shadow and light areas, so that they would shine through the details on the clothing that I would add later. Then I started on the shirt folds, and I don't know, but they didn't turn out that great. It's an area where I need a lot of practice. I make my way around the painting and I actually managed to make some interesting color choices that work really interestingly in a good way, for once. For example, the blue for the shadow on the skin looks really nice, and the points between light and shadow got some really nice saturated transitions. But then I added the background, and it was very clear that the whole character was painted way too light, because it all looked so washed out on top of this already way too saturated background. But was I going to paint over everything I just did one more time to deepen the shadow and bring out the forms? No! I was lazy and tired and decided to just add line art to make the image readable at least. So then I left the painting overnight, because I just couldn't be bothered with it anymore. The next day I looked at the painting and I was shook it was so bad. I really feel bad for the beautiful reference photo. So I decided to fix it digitally. So I scanned in the painting. My scanner makes the colors look even worse, but there are remedies for that. And then I fired up Krita, the free digital painting program that I use when I work digitally. So, time to fix this. First, I started by removing the white border. Then I used the transform tool to lean the image to the opposite side of its initial lean, so that the lean was cancelled and the character stood somewhat straighter. I had to go back later and lean it even more though. Then I used the clone tool to fix the edges of the painting that were now leaned out of my canvas. Then I just took the selection tool and selected the body. And then I used the transform tool again and simply shortened the body quite a bit until it looked more plausible. Then I used the precious clone tool again to correct the missing parts of the painting, and I shortened the canvas to also make up for the shortened painting. Then I select the head of the character and unleaned it further with the transform tool. I also used the liquefy option in the transform tool to further fix the face. Then I'm back again with the clone tool, fixing the mess I made. Now it's finally looking better proportion and leaning wise, so I move on to work on the colors. First, I make an overlay layer, where I saturate some of the transitions to light and I go in and deepen some of the shadows. I'm using the airbrush for most of this, by the way. Then I start using filter layers, and I'm so sorry, but I failed to record the windows that pop up so you can't actually see the adjustments that I'm making. Just imagine buttons and sliders and curves being pulled about and pressed wildly while I try to find the right settings. Anyway, the first filter layer I add is a colored adjustment layer, where you pull on a curve to deepen or lighten colors. So I basically deepened and saturated the colors a lot. Then I added a levels filter layer, where I slide a slider between black and white to control how black the darks are and how white the whites are. I mostly darken the darks and midtones. And then I lower the opacity of the filter layer to lessen the effect so it isn't too harsh. Then I accidentally pressed the inverse filter, which, as you can see, inverts the colors. What a shock. Then I play around with hue and saturation, but I end up using a burn filter to burn midzones and shadows of the painting. Then I make another overlay layer and further deepen the shadows. I play around with the layer modes, but end up sticking with the overlay anyway. Then I add some saturation in the transition between the lights and the shadows. After that, I try to decide if I should lighten the suspenders to make those rainbows pop. But I end up not doing that, they pop enough as they already are at this point. Then I make a layer of one solid color to help the colors in the painting become more cohesive. I lower the opacity of this layer and set it to overlay. Then I try and fail to use the magic wand tool to select the background, but it's too sensitive to the watercolor texture, so I end up having to select the background the old-fashioned way. Let's fast forward through that. Then I make the selection I made a layer mask so I can play around without worry. I'm trying to desaturate the background and make it so that the character stands out from it more. I end up using the color layer mode and a lower opacity setting. Then I add some overlay layer and try to even out the background that I had painted two different values. I later delete this layer, preferring the difference in the values in the background. Then I made a filter layer set to desaturate so that I could check the values. Turns out the painting still needed some contrast, so I add another filter layer with the levels adjustment options, set to further deepen the contrast and the values of the painting. And then I called it done! Here's a comparison between the two paintings. It's a really big difference. Remember that the scanned version looks worse than the actual original though. So, I feel like I somewhat redeemed my lazy mistakes by going in and working on them digitally. This is in no way perfect, but it's certainly better than my original painting. Awkward laugh, sorry. So, moral of the story is, please don't be lazy like me and make all these lazy mistakes. But If you end up being lazy like me anyway, now you at least know a way to sort of save your artwork, in a way. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like and subscribe for more from me. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!